The God of Small Things is a story about two twins.
Twins who experience more than their fair share of adversity.
By learning how the smallest things in life can make the biggest impact,
They discover the only thing they can rely on.
The only thing they can rely on is each other.
Each other.
The river had risen, its water quick and black, snaking towards the sea, carrying with it cloudy night skies, a whole palm front of a thatched fence, and other gifts the wind had given it. In the beginning of chapter 15, she doesn't use very granola-like characteristics for this river. It's very much totally her writing style. She says it's quick and black, and then it snakes towards the sea. And what I found really gave it that persona-like charm is the fact that the wind gave it this, all like the tree branches and fence and everything. So she really gives it that animalistic-like quality.
Roy's almost like creating another character with the nature. Like, I feel like she uses only words that are like action filled. It's quick and it's snaking, and like she manages to create for every single part of the nature. She creates like almost a separate character, so you can like know the way that the river is. The moonlit rivers fell from his swimming arms like sleeves of silver. It took him only a few minutes to make the crossing.
When he reached the other side, he emerged gleaming and pulled himself ashore. Black as the night that surrounded him, black as the water he had crossed.
She characterizes the river initially as black, and then once Velutha starts swimming in it, all of a sudden this turns to silver water running off of him. And then she addresses how he's black as night and black as the water that he had crossed, and so she's really comparing him to nature at that point.
The way that she talks about the river sort of contrasts with the way that she talks about Velutha. When it brings him up, it says, when it talks about his swimming arms like sleeves of silver, it almost shows he creates the sleeves of silver in the black river, sort of making like the connection that he is sort of the good in what is sort of personified as something that's not as good.
Yeah, definitely. This is definitely probably the shortest chapter in the book, but she seems to accomplish a lot. She talks about, in the quotes, he left no ripples in the water and no footprints on the shore. That just really epitomizes who Velutha is. He's an untouchable. He can't leave his mark on society, and that pretty much follows him all the way until his death. He says things will get worse, he thought to himself, then better, and we know things won't get better because just for the simple fact of his role in society and who he is. And she also goes on to say that he's the god of loss and the god of small things, and that really makes him a major character in this book at this point. It's the title of the book. She gives him the title of the book, so he really is what goes wrong, whether he likes it or not, and whether anybody else likes it or not. He's the problem of the book.
Yeah, and at that point she creates a really solid reference point for one of the later chapters when she says that he's walking towards the heart of darkness. And I thought that was really unique because she's alluding to that novel written years ago, and it was all about uncharted territory and danger, and that nobody knew it existed. And so she ties that in the later chapter when the twins don't even notice that he's there watching what's happening.
Sophie Mall had convinced the twins that it was essential that she go along too. That the absence of children, all children, would heighten the adult's remorse. Her clinching argument was that if she were left behind, she might be tortured and forced to reveal their hiding place.
They didn't see someone else lying asleep in the shadows, as lonely as a wolf, a brown leaf on his black back, that made the monsoons come on time.
Chapter 16 starts out with the three kids, Esther, Rochelle, and Sophie Mall going down to the river and uncamouflaging their boat that they've had hidden. And what I really liked about this part in particular was that she said that The bamboo drooped into the river as though grieving in advance for what they knew was about to happen. And so I really like that the author puts this much trust of the children into nature that they don't seem to think that, you know, the casted shadows and the dark and fast-moving river is something to fear, because, you know, this is something in their everyday life. So I really like how this starts out the chapter. I think it's a really good piece of language and showing an ultimate theme of betrayal by something that they've trusted all their lives.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, this is a chapter that we've been leading up to in the whole book, I feel. And it's very short again, and it's where we learn how Sophie Mull truly dies, and we see how it's a complete accident. It's really not their fault.
We're hinted about the death, of course, like early on in the book, like in the first chapter, and all this anticipation, I mean, you know, all these events surrounding it that we learn about, and we're finally here in the chapter where the death occurs, and it's just not dramatic at all. Like, it's just a silent, I mean, it's a drowning, and this river just sweeps her away, and there's no sharks that you mentioned. It's like there's no whirlpool. It's not like something out of an epic
No big
film.
story.
Yeah. And
the things like something so like accidental is like the destruction of their whole lives, pretty much. This haunts them from this point forward for their whole lives, and it's just like domino effects everything else that happens in their life. Because even at the end here, we see that Velutho is sitting there, and like we later learn that he's going to be the one blamed for this, and then their mom gets really upset, and like the quote in here says that made the monsoons come on time. Like, I just feel like, you know, monsoons like destruct things, and like he is the monsoon, I feel, in their lives, and it's just an accident though. It's not necessarily him doing it on purpose.
So it's like monsoon is just you know, something that nature does. I mean,
Exactly.
It comes from nature and destroys things, and so like in that sense, it's like an accident every time it happens. But so is
And so is this.
In Twinkle B. Manvar's article, Velutha, the downtrodden in Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things, he states that it was his desire to relive as untouchable, which resulted in the tragedy. But he could never be a coward and dared to speak out even when he knew that his life was in danger. His place is certainly nearer to a Shakespearean tragic hero.
On the back seat, she had found her way in through a hole in the windscreen, tempted by some seat sponge for her nest. She never found her way out. No one noticed her panicked car window appeals. She died on the back seat with her legs in the air, like a joke.
17 is about when the twins are older, and the way that the events are described, we get the impression they're still in a state of reflection. And at the end, it alludes to what's going to happen, Velutha being arrested for the death of Sophie Mull. And it says, a posse of touchable policemen crossed the Minnecaw River, sluggish and swollen with recent rain, and picked their way through the wet undergrowth, clumping into the heart of darkness.
Yeah.
Which we know is where Velutha went at the end of chapter 15.
Yeah, I think that definitely shows that he is, like, it sort of foreshadows, like, his being arrested. And I think that really sort of, like, ties back to the article where Manavar sort of, like, talks about Velutha being, like, a Shakespearean tragic hero. And I think it really shows that, like, talking about Velutha being the god of small things, it can also be compared to other people seeing Velutha as a small thing. Like when the policemen arrest him, and the way that they treat him really shows that they see him as like this really small, like non-human thing.
Mm-hmm. Like he's not even a person.
Yeah.
They can charge him with this, you know, death of a young child just because nobody's going to feel bad for him.
Exactly.
And that's just it.
And the policemen, like the big things in the situation, is they're related to the government and, you know, enforce the law and like.
And they're more important than the caste system.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and a really kind of strange and random part of this is, like you said, the twins are older in this, and so they're talking about how the Plymouth is sitting in their driveway of their house and how it's just rotting, and the bird flies in and she dies in there. And my favorite part of that quote is that it says that she died in the back seat with her legs in the air like a joke. And that very much, I mean, I know it's there to talk about the Plymouth and how ignored it was, but it really alludes to Sophie Mall and the way she died, because the bird is described as like banging against the windows and chirping and everything, and it's a joke because we don't hear a sound from Sophie when she goes into the water. You know, the kids don't even realize that she's not with them until she doesn't respond. They don't hear, you know, gurgling in the background or yell or like anything. And so this bird just kind of symbolizes that there wasn't anything even realized that was wrong before they discovered, you know, the bird's dead, Sophie Mall is dead. It was just a big joke.
Yeah.
Nothing, no fight was recognized.
For Eston and Rahel, Sophie Mall's death really signifies the day in which they lost both their mother and father figures.
Perhaps this is why they feel that they can come back home. They need to reclaim this world of small things. And now enough time has passed, and enough people have passed away, so they can come back and they can have a fresh start without anybody really realizing all the tragic events that their home